Amy Winehouse was a once-in-a-generation talent plagued by inner demons and tabloid-splashed controversy, but who through it all brought a spark of life and joy to the world, and filled the airwaves with her incomparable voice and witty lyrics. The new biopic of the star, Back to Black, directed by Sam Taylor Johnson and starring Marisa Abela, was an opportunity to take a deeper examination of Amy's inner life and her work, but instead seems mostly interested with a more surface-level, and in many cases sanded down, look at the star's life. So what did the film get right and wrong about Amy's life story? And why does it, in the end, totally fall flat as a biopic of such a larger-than-life, interesting person? Amy's musical talent was apparent from an early age, and she began writing and performing songs in her teens. As Back to Black shows, Amy did get her initial break into the music industry thanks to her best friend Tyler James, giving her recordings to some executives he had met while building his own career. Nick Godwin, who went on to become her first manager, told The Guardian in 2004, "Tyler James brought us a cassette and said, 'This is a friend of mine, you should have a listen.' We put it on and there was this amazing voice, fantastic lyrics. They were 8 or 9 minute poems, really. Quite awkward guitar playing, but utterly breathtaking." She was always more interested in the music itself than in celebrity, and only wanted to be known for her artistic talent.
I don't think I'm gonna be at all famous. I don't think I could handle it. I'd probably go mad, you know what I mean? I would go mad.
But thanks to her incredible voice and catchy, often raunchy lyrics, her first album, Frank, became a hit and started bringing a lot of attention to Amy herself. She wasn't totally happy with Frank because the record label had pushed her to change some of the songs and mixes in ways that she didn't approve of, and so she didn't feel like the album was fully her. But it went platinum and received a slew of awards, putting Amy on the map and giving her a shot at a real career as a musician. Interestingly, at the time, some people thought that she was an industry plant, due to the fact that she was under Simon Fuller's label, who generally created more commercial pop acts like the Spice Girls and S Club 7. But Amy openly railed against Fuller, and anyone else that got in the way of her trying to make the music she wanted to make. And her talent was undeniable, and so those rumors eventually abated.
I think the more people see of me, the more they'll realise that all I'm good for is making tunes. So leave me alone and I'll do it. I will do the music.
The film makes attempts to showcase Amy's larger-than-life, witty, sharp personality, and at times does succeed. But often the characterization falls flat because the film itself doesn't always seem interested in Amy as a full person, which we'll unpack in a moment. But in real life, Amy's personality was just as impactful as her voice.
She was just a charming, sweet lady. I had a bit of a crush on her, to be honest. She was raw, she was fast with a blue joke, had a big giant laugh. And was just a sweetheart, you know?
She was hilarious and open to a fault.
It's so refreshing to hear someone who isn't speaking like they've taken elocution lessons.
Yeah. They gave me elocution lessons, but they kind of...
She was honest about the fact that she wasn't always very self-confident, feeling out of place in the world at a young age, but working to find her sense of self.
When I was like 8 or 9, or even up to the age of maybe 12, so I was very like, I really don't fit in, I'm really different to everyone else. By the time I was 14, I was like, I really don't fit in, I'm different to everyone else, you know?
And while she did find inner confidence as she grew up and found her calling, the seeds of self-doubt never truly left her.
So why are you self-critical of your performance?
It was a piece of shit. You look fit though.
Thank you.
Amy was rather open about her struggles with depression and bulimia and even her addiction issues, whether being frank about it all in songs or cheeky in interviews.
I'm sure there's no better drug than going to the gym. Do you know what I mean?
Amy, by all accounts, had overcome her drug addictions by around 2008, but unfortunately had instead replaced them with an acute dependency on alcohol. The film does focus on these issues constantly, but it often feels removed. There are many shots of Amy dramatically reaching for a drink or walking drunkenly down the street, but they feel more like they're pulled out of a drinking is bad episode of a 90s teen show than a real attempt to engage with or unpack the spiraling struggles of a real human being. We do see how the loss of her beloved grandmother pushes her further into her addiction, which does track with real life according to her family. One happy moment the movie does allow is when we get to see Amy's grandmother create Amy's first beehive hairdo, though in real life that was the work of Amy's hairstylist. Before we go on, we all know there are so many things in life you just have to compromise on, like finding a nice apartment, but with a neighbor learning to play drums at all hours of the night, or finding a new favorite show and just having to hope it doesn't get canceled. But the one place you shouldn't have to compromise is your health. So don't skip out on making an appointment because there's such a hassle to book, or go back to that one doctor who doesn't even seem to listen to anything you have to say during the appointment. Instead, check out today's sponsor, Zocdoc, the place where you can easily find and book doctors who will listen to you, make you feel comfortable, and prioritize your health. They make it super easy. You can search by location, availability, and insurance, so you won't feel forced to make any compromises. Zocdoc is a free app and website where you can search and compare highly rated in-network doctors near you and instantly book appointments with them online. You can read through reviews from real patients to get a feel for each doctor, and then when you find one you like, you can book them instantly. No need to call and listen to bad hold music while hoping they'll have an availability. There are tens of thousands of top-rated, credible doctors and specialists to choose from, and you can easily filter them to find the ones that are actually near you, take your insurance, and treat pretty much any condition you're searching for. The typical wait time to see a doctor booked on Zocdoc is between just 24 and 72 hours, and you can even score same-day appointments. Using Zocdoc has made finding and booking a doctor so much easier for me. If you want to give them a try, go to Zocdoc.com/thetake and download the Zocdoc app for free. Then find and book a top-rated doctor today. That's ZocDoc.com/thetake. Zocdoc.com/thetake. Oddly, while the film seems desperate to make much of Amy's story about the men in her life, it leaves out many very important ones. Salam Remy, who produced Olive Frank and part of Back to Black, and Mark Ronson, who co-produced Back to Black, the album from which the film borrows its title, are essentially just name-checked, even though they were integral collaborators in her career and helped to build out her iconic sound. Though the film is ostensibly about the lead-up to and creation of Back to Black, it doesn't actually seem very interested in getting into the process of writing or recording the album, just the drama surrounding it. Amy's love for and connection with collaborators like Nas, aka the Mr. Jones in Me and Mr. Jones, Yassine Bey, formerly known as Mos Def, and Questlove are pretty much completely omitted.
I thought I had my doctorate in jazz, but no, she taught me a lot. And she would assign homework. All right, study this record, study this record, study this record.
The main focus of the film, in tandem with her dependency issues, is her relationship with Blake Filder Civil, who did in fact inspire most of Back to Black. They really did meet playing pool in Camden.
Yeah, what'd you call it then? The Winehouse style?
I don't know, it's a bit vintage, innit? A bit of an anachronism, aren't I?
Though it's unlikely that he was the one that introduced mega music fan Amy to hit 1960s band the Shangri-Las. They had a very tumultuous on-again, off-again relationship as depicted in the film. But there is one glaring change in the narrative. While Blake has openly admitted that he was the one that introduced Amy to harder drugs, in an apparent attempt to clean up his image and shift blame more fully to Amy, the film sees her begin using those harder drugs all on her own. The film also moves around the timeline of her life and their relationship quite a bit. In the film, Amy has her tragic Glastonbury Music Festival set, goes to see Blake in jail, where he breaks up with her, and then her Grammy win follows. In reality, she won her Grammy in February 2008. Her Glastonbury set was in June 2008. Blake was in jail from July 2008 to February 2009, and the pair divorced in summer 2009 after his release. A through line of the story is Amy's apparent desire for children. She was indeed open with those close to her and in interviews about her desire to one day have a big family. In an interview with The Guardian at the beginning of her career, she said, "In 10 years, I'm not going to be doing this. I'm going to be looking after my husband and our 7 kids." But a lot changed in her life between the time she was 20 years old and just starting out and trying to imagine her future, and when she passed at 27. And so to frame this desire for a baby as one of Amy's deepest, most animating wants, to the point that it's implied that finding out that Blake had a baby with his new girlfriend is the reason Amy drank herself to death, feels odd at best. In the time leading up to her passing, Amy had been in very ill health. The combination of the effects of her eating disorder and alcohol use had apparently begun to wear her body down. While the film posits that she never stopped obsessing over Blake, and this contributed to her untimely end, the reality was that at the time of her passing, she was already dating someone else, director Reg Travis, and was, if anything, desperate to move on from Back to Black and its associations.
She wanted to do all these other projects with Questlove and Mos Def. She was like, I don't need this.
She was looking forward to doing new things, and felt trapped by the album because it had become such a runaway success that people just wanted to hear the same songs over and over.
The material felt so tired and didn't feel relevant to her anymore. But because she was such a huge star and there was all of these different pressures, she had to keep performing Back to Black.
While the film is generally factually accurate, the way it chooses to frame Amy and the things that happened in her life leaves a lot to be desired. That's not to say the film is all bad. It does feature some great performances by Marisa Abela as Amy and Jack O'Connell as Blake. The choice to have Marisa sing herself instead of lip-singing Amy's actual tracks was controversial, and it does flatten the film a bit. As Leslie Felprin noted in her review for The Hollywood Reporter, the actress reportedly took hours upon hours of music lessons to get to a place where she could mimic Winehouse's singing on stage, but the end result still sounds auto-tuned up the wazoo. Marisa does have a perfectly fine voice, and attempts to mimic Amy as best she can, but of course there's really no way for it to not ring hollow when it's going to be compared to such a powerful, affecting voice like Amy's. And the fact that the film chooses to recreate so many of Amy's performances beat by beat actually just serves to highlight the difference more for any fan who's ever watched the real versions. Marisa certainly worked to get all of the mannerisms and expressions correct, but completely lacks the force and spark that made Amy such a vibrant performer. Marisa clearly worked to really study Amy and bring her physicality and humanity to life on screen.
I wanted to find Amy, the girl, the person, because you can't really play an icon, you know? You have to play a human being.
But because the film itself doesn't always seem very interested in Amy's inner world, she had a lot of extra work to do to pull this to the surface. But it's that very lack of interest in Amy and her life's work that causes the film to fall flat overall. Though director Sam Taylor Johnson said that she specifically chose to focus less on Amy's addiction and troubles and instead focus on the music, telling USA Today, "Everything about Amy was so voyeuristic, that terrible and constant picking apart of her life. I thought it was time to go back to the music. Her lyrics could tell the story." There isn't really that much focus on the actual creative process behind the music at all. Sure, they show her singing plenty, but the movie doesn't seem to care to show Amy actually brainstorming and writing and recording, actually doing the creative process she loves so much, very much at all. The film seems more interested in focusing on her relationships, particularly with the men in her life, but then refuses to engage with the negative impact those men had on her life. In the film, her father Mitch is portrayed as a protective, loving guide, whereas in real life, he was allegedly much more interested in how he could use Amy to enrich himself, even at her expense.
She's like, yo, why is he bringing another camera crew to St. Lucia? Why are you doing your life story, which is really my life story?
And Blake also has his edges softened to make him seem just like some innocent bystander caught up in Amy's whirlwind. And it would have been totally fair to shine new light onto these characters. There's no need to paint them as full-on villains. But to completely remove any culpability they had in Amy's downfall feels unfair to Amy and the truth. The film does engage with how terrible the paparazzi were to her during her life, but only the paparazzi. It doesn't really analyze the larger media structure that spent years working to absolutely destroy Amy at every chance it got.
Did you see Amy Winehouse in the paper this week? My God, she looks like a campaign poster for neglected horses.
The film seems to prefer engaging with Amy as a symbol rather than as a real, specific human being. It is thankfully sympathetic to her and her struggles, but by refusing to contend with the larger societal pressures and the enabling of those close to her and how all of those things also contributed to her struggles, it does narrow the blame for all of Amy's problems down to her individually in a way that rings untrue. That's not to say that Amy should be portrayed as some perfect person who could do no wrong and was solely a victim of the world. It's totally right to analyze how her own decision-making contributed to her issues, but completely erasing all of those other things erases the full picture of her story. As Peyton Robinson wrote for Roger Ebert, Back to Black makes a martyr of its subject, flattening Amy Winehouse's life and music to a series of binges and failure to overcome heartbreak. While there's no way to separate Amy's biography from her addiction, to conflate it with her entire existence, sidelining personhood and omitting the pillars of her legacy, is an offensive approach to storytelling. While the film thankfully isn't necessarily exploitative like many had feared it would be, it also just isn't great. It doesn't seem particularly interested in actually engaging with the life and story it's supposed to be covering, and so it doesn't really seem to have any real reason to exist. Instead of giving us new insight or a new perspective of this beloved icon, it feels like the film is just seeking to paper over the truths revealed in the much better Oscar-winning 2015 documentary Amy, which actually sought to explore Amy as a full person while analyzing how the environment she found herself in shaped her.
She couldn't escape it. No one would leave her alone. It was just disgusting.
Amy was a tragic, complicated person, and as someone who had so much of the narrative about her stripped away from her control, twisted in dark ways, and thrown back at her, she deserved a biopic that was really willing to confront the full reality of her story and engage with it in a meaningful way.
If she had lived, I would have said, slow down, you're too important.
Unfortunately, Back to Black is not that biopic. But thankfully, we do have Amy's own work to return to again and again. Her music, her hilarious interviews, her sweet behind-the-scenes moments. So we can always choose to remember Amy's full story. That's The Take. Click here to watch the video we think you'll love, or here to check out a whole playlist of awesome content. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications. And make sure to subscribe to our Patreon for exclusive new videos.